Hello and welcome back to another Rush Duel Links video. Today we're taking a look at some new Rush Duel skills that have been leaked over on Duel Links Meta, which is the #1 website to get any information for anything Duel Links, which obviously includes the Rush Duel side of it. So these skills are to be taken with a grain of salt. Obviously they've been kind of data mined, so some things may be slightly changed, some things a little bit incomplete, but overall this does give us a pretty good idea of what things are going to be like going forward. And the first skill we're going to be taking a look at is this Nail Skill 1. So this skill can be used if there are no maximum monsters in your deck, requirement none, effect at the beginning of the duel, add something to your deck. And the note here, the added cards are probably copies of Nail's Maximum. Now this is the generic skill that every character gets to add their boss monster to their deck if you don't have any copies. This is basically going to be a free-to-play friendly. I want to try out the new cards without actually owning the new cards, so realistically this isn't going to see much play. It's just nice that it's here. The next skill, however, is probably going to be the actual Drago skill. So this is Nail Skill 2. This skill can be used if you have at least 8 maximum monsters in your deck, and the only monsters in it are Cyburst type with 100 defense or less. Now first off, this does confirm that we'll be able to get 3 copies of each of the maximum pieces. There were some people going around saying that probably we'll only get 1 copy of each, but since they were going to be in a box, it was pretty much a guarantee, but this does confirm that. And this does lock us into Cyburst monsters 100 defense or less, which again is kind of fine. But we can return 1 card from our hand to the top or bottom of the deck, your choice, and decrease the attack of up to 2 face-up monsters in the field by 800 to the end of this turn. This turn, those monsters can be treated as 2 tributes to the tribute summon of a monster in attack position. So notably, we can use this to weaken 2 of our opponent's monsters, or we can use it to use 2 of our monsters as 2 tributes, or we can mix and match. We can reduce 1 of our opponent's monsters by 800, then make 1 of our monsters be able to be used as 2 tributes for a tribute summon, which is pretty cool. I don't know if this means that we'll be getting more Cyburst high-level monsters, or is this just going to be a way to tribute out the middle piece of Drago? But there is a chance that we might see some of the later Cyburst support and their other level 7 and 8 monsters come to the game early. We could get a taller shoot Hydron, which at 2500 base is pretty decent. If you have 3 or more Cyburst type monsters in your graveyard, send a card of a deck to the graveyard. This card gains attack equal to the number of monsters in your graveyard times 100 to the end of this turn. And if you have 8 or more Cyburst type monsters, you can draw a card. So a pretty good card. It can gain a ton of attack, which is always going to be really, really powerful, and has a draw built in. This would be an absolutely fantastic card, and that's why I probably think it won't be coming out, because it seems a little bit too good at the moment. So the next skill we're going to talk about is the Archive Skill 1. So this skill can be used if the only monsters in your deck are level 4 or Thunder type monsters. This is an interesting restriction where we can only use level 4 monsters, so anything 3 or less is now off the table, but we can use any level 4s we want, or Thunders. So this is a Thunder specific skill. So this potentially means we're going to get the Thunder Beetles, but the skill itself, if we go on, doesn't actually work with the Thunder Beetles. It can be activated during the turn you have normal summoned a level 7 or higher monster with 1600 defense or less once per duel. So this is where it gets funky, because the only level 7 and higher monsters we're allowed to run in the deck are going to be Thunder monsters in order for this skill to actually work. So it means we have to have level 7 or higher Thunder monsters. Now there are only 2 monsters that actually come to mind that we could use with this skill. The first being Stormbolt Destroyer, which is a 2400 attack, 1600 defense, level 7 Thunder type monster. If your opponent has 2 or less cards in their hand, you can special summon 1 level 4 or lower Thunder type normal monster from your graveyard face up to your field. So the effect is fine. It's a little bit restrictive for just a body, but it's okay. 2400 is a little bit weak, but 24 is better than 23, so... But the other more impressive boss monster is Blitzkrieg Cavalry Trigger Drago. This is a 2500 body, which again is pretty decent. 2500 attack, again, much better. Does have that 1500 defense, which is lower than 1600. And we can send the top card of that to the graveyard, gain 300 attack, so 28. Not the biggest number, but still not bad. Does get over that 25 limit. For the end of this turn, then if your opponent has no cards in their hand, this card inflicts piercing battle damage. And again, inflicting piercing is always really, really important. Having a 2800 attack piercer is always going to be pretty cool. But for the rest of the skill, 1 face-up monster on your opponent's field lose attack equal to its level times 100. So now, if this hits a maximum monster, it will be losing 1000 attack because maximums are level 10. That means if we're going for specifically Drago, that will only drop to 3000, and the 2800 attack of Trigger Drago will not be enough to get over it, so you will need an extra little boost or a nerf to your opponent's attack. But the other 2 maximums, this will let us clear. Then you can change the battle position of one attack position monster on their field, which means if we're not against the maximum, we can just change a monster to defense mode and then pierce over it with the Trigger Drago. To me, this sounds like we're almost certainly getting Trigger Drago just because it works so well with it, and maybe we'll get Stormbolt Destroyer to go along with it. Next up, we have Rower Skill 1. This skill can be used if the only monsters with 1400 or more attack in your deck are light fiend types. Requirement none. Effect, send one card from your hand to the graveyard and change the battle position of all defense position monsters on the field. That's yours and your opponent's. Then, level 4 or lower fiend type monsters on your field become level 5 and decrease the level of all level 5 or higher monsters on your opponent's field by 4. For the rest of this turn, you can only attack with level 7 or higher monsters. So now, there's a lot to break down here. First things first, this only makes your level 4 or lower become 5. So this will not let your 5s become 6s or your 6s become 7s. This will only work on level 4 or lower and will immediately bump them all up to 5, which is pretty good because that now means that we can use Heavy Metal. Because if we just go take a look, Heavy Metal specifically needs us to normal summon this card by tributing a level 5 or higher monster. Now, there are some other Royal Rebel boss monsters, such as Royal Rebels do Metal, but this specifically requires us to tribute 2 level 7 or higher fiend type monsters, which means the skill itself will not put all of our monsters up to being big enough that we can just get Doom Metal's effect off, which does mean getting Doom Metal's effect, assuming it does come out, would be pretty rough still. But Doom Metal is a good anti-maximum card, so it would make sense to come out alongside some more Rower skills. It is quite simply, during the turn you normal summon this card by attributing 2 level 7 or higher fiend type monsters, destroy all face-up monsters on your opponent's field, then inflict damage to your opponent equal to the total original level of the monsters destroyed times 100. Maximum that'll be 1000, which is pretty good. You'll be able to blow up your opponent's monster, get in for 1000 damage, and then ideally attack directly for a further 2500, which is really strong. A monster that will, however, get its effect using this skill is Royal Rebels Invasion. So during the turn, you normal summon this card by attributing 2 level 5 or higher monsters, which again, this skill perfectly sets this card up. Destroy all face-up level 4 or lower monsters on your opponent's field. So this effect is a little bit weak, as well as the fact that this monster's attack is a little bit weak at 2300. The main reason to actually play Royal Rebels Invasion is to bring it back as a body of Royal Rebels Echo. It's not very easy to show on here, but basically, we can place a card from our hand on the bottom of our deck, special summon a level 7 or lower fiend type monster with 0 defense from our hand or graveyard face up to our field. Then if we special summon a level 7 by this effect, we can add a fiend type monster from our graveyard to our hand, which is fantastic. This is one of the best support cards that Royal Rebels ever get, and it is perfect to bring back Invasion and then immediately sack it off for something like a Heavy Metal or a Doom Metal. Another card that we could potentially get, which also fits a lot of this criteria, is the Royal Rebels No Wave, which is a 0 attack, 2600 defense level 7 monster, which is basically just used as tribute fodder. There are a lot of cards that can cheat this card out onto the field and contribute it to get the other Royal Rebels effect, so it is quite an important combo piece for the deck, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this released in the box. Overall, I'm quite happy with this skill. I think Royal Rebels have never really been in a bad spot in Duel Links, but they would potentially be in a pretty bad spot going forward into the maximum era, and this skill does help us quite a lot, especially because it decreases the level of all level 5 or higher monsters on your opponent's field by 4. That means your opponent's maximum monsters that were level 10 and therefore untouchable by something like Heavy Metal now become level 6 and can just immediately be popped by Heavy Metal, which is a huge boost through the Royal Rebel strategy. Next up, we have Rower Skill 2. This skill can be used if the only monsters in your deck are level 4 or Fiend monsters, so again that level 4 or claws. Requirements none. Play up to 2 level 7 or higher light fiend type effect monsters from your hand with different levels in face up defense position. You cannot change the battle positions. You cannot attack directly with monsters with 2600 attack or more during this turn. So to me, this sounds perfect for getting out Doom Metal, because Doom Metal specifically needs 2 high level monsters on the field, so we basically cheat out 2 from our hand, immediately tribute them both out, summon out the Doom Metal, which makes me think Doom Metal is definitely going to be coming sometime soon. Next up, we have the Rower and Roman skill. This one is a bit funky. So this skill can be used if the only monsters in your deck are Fiend or Psychic monsters. Requirement none. Return 2 monsters in your graveyard with different types that are not level 4 to your deck. 1 face-up light or psychic monster on your field can be treated as 2 tributes to the tribute summon of Royal Rebels Heavy Metal or Prima-Gatana the Shining Superstar in attack position. So the one that's a bit weird here is the Heavy Metal, because unless it's a level 5 or 6 monster, making it 2 tributes doesn't actually do much for Royal Rebels Heavy Metal. It'll just come out of the 2500 vanilla, which is a bit weird. Plus, I don't really think these 2 archetypes have a ton of synergy. It's very cute because both of these are from cousins in the show, so I can see how there can be some synergy there, but I'm not sold on the skill. I'm not too excited by it. The next up is the skill that surprised me the most, and that is the Harpy skill. So I was originally expecting the Harpies to come out and just literally be 3 copies of the Harpy Ladies cards and that'll be it. But it looks like we are going to be getting more cards and they will receive a bit of support in the form of skills. So this skill can be used if the only monsters with 1400 or more attack in your deck are wind type monsters. Requirement none. Effect 1 face-up Harpy Ladies or Harpy's Pet Dragon. Now this is very important because we hadn't heard about Harpy's Pet Dragon coming out at all, which means this is almost certainly going to be in the box. And if Harpy's Pet Dragon's in that box, chances are there will be a little bit more Harpy support. I wouldn't think we'd be getting a lot of the really good Harpy support, so it's really hard to predict what exactly is going to be in there, but I wouldn't expect to see the equip card. I wouldn't expect to see any of like the crazy strong cards. Maybe we'll start seeing some of the weaker cards, maybe Harpy Lady number 3, but it's really hard to predict those cards. But Harpy's Pet Dragon, all but confirmed. It's a pretty cool boss monster. It can boost its attack up to a maximum of 3800, which is pretty big and can somewhat contest maximums. Face up Harpy Lady or Harpy Lady's Pet Dragon on your field gains attack equal to its level times 100. So again, Harpy Ladies, if it's in maximum mode, will gain 1000 attack, putting it up to 44, plus using its own effect and gain an extra 500, which will put it all the way up to 49. If it's a Harpy Ladies not in maximum mode, it will only be boosted by 500, putting it up to 26, or if it's the middle piece, can gain that again extra 5 and go up to 3000, which is pretty cool. And if it does boost Harpy's Pet Dragon, it will gain the 700, putting it up to 2700, plus then it can boost its own effect, which can get even bigger. So it does seem pretty good. Then, if all your opponent's monsters are in defense position, you can change the battle position of one of those monsters, which means it's another way for us to get to our opponent's life points, which is something we are always looking for. Having ways to get to our opponent's life points is always so important, and decks that don't have it often do struggle. So, really important part of the effect, and a really good skill. Next up, we have Harpy's Skill 2. So this skill can be used if you begin the duel with a deck containing at least 3 Harpy Ladies. And just to take note, Harpy Ladies does specifically refer to the maximum. So that's not saying, oh, you can have Harpy Lady and Harpy Ladies and they'll all add up. No, you need to have the entirety of the maximum basically to get this to work. Can be activated on turn 6 onwards, so very late skill. Reveal 1 winged beast type monster with 2100 attack, 0 defense from your hand, then 2 cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard. You can then add Harpy Ladies. So again, because this doesn't say L, R, or any of that, I would assume this is only allowing us to add the middle piece from our graveyard to our hand, send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard. And if you do, your opponent takes no battle damage this turn. So this is potentially a way to perform your maximum summon later on into the game if we've already seen our Harpy Ladies and it's gone to the graveyard, but it doesn't let us OTK our opponent with it because we then don't let our opponent take any battle damage. It's an okay consistency kind of skill, but I think overall Harpy Skill 1 does seem more interesting and a little bit better to me. Next up, Hangry Roman skill. So this skill can be used if the only monsters with 1400 or more attack in your deck are psychic type monsters with 0 defense. At the beginning of your turn, from turn 2 onwards, you won't be able to hold back anymore and become a Hangry Duelist. So this is the second way we have to transform. Can be activated on turn 2 onwards if you have a normal summoned level 7 monster. Add 1 level 2 or higher psychic effect monster with 500 attack or less from your graveyard to your hand. So this is a bit weird because it's level 2 or higher. That means we can't take Roman Pick, which would be the main card that you'd usually go for. One card we can take, however, is Speedy Performer, which is an okay card that can boost up attack. I don't know if it's really worth having a skill specifically just to get back this card, and there aren't that many other options. But one of those options is Green Drummer, which lets us shuffle a psychic monster from our graveyard into the deck to shuffle 1 monster from your opponent's graveyard into the deck. Then if you have a face-up normal monster, gain 500 life points. These are the only 2 that I could really find that really do anything, so I'm expecting us maybe to get more options for this coming out in the box. There are a couple that would be pretty cool, and there is also kind of a mini archetype that came out called the Star Hands that maybe could be coming out, but I think it's probably a little bit too early for them, especially since one of them specifically does offer support to Esperard, which we don't have access to yet. Overall, the Hangry Roman skill doesn't seem great to me. I would really like to see a really busted psychic skill come out, since the cards that we keep getting for them are so underwhelming, but if this is all we've got, this is all we've got, so maybe it will be okay. And then finally, we have our Yugioh skill. This skill can be used if the only monsters in your deck are spellcaster type or machine type monsters with 2100 or less. So that means we cannot use Ace Breaker in this deck, for example. Requirement none. Effect, send a maximum monster from your hand to the graveyard and set any monster from your hand into the field. Then you can reduce the attack of 1 face-up monster in your opponent's field by 800 to the end of this turn. At the end of the turn you use this skill, return 1 maximum monster from your graveyard to the top of your deck. So this is a bit of a weird skill. So we have to send a maximum from our hand to the graveyard, but then we can cheat out a monster from our hand in defense mode. Because this is set with a skill, we haven't summoned it and we haven't changed its battle position this turn, which means we still can flip it up during that turn. So we get to cheat out a monster. The biggest monster that can be, though, is going to either be a Rider Cross or a Seven's Robe Magician. And then we can weaken one of our opponent's monsters by 800, which is okay. But again, we can't run any big beaters, so we're going all in on this maximum strategy anyway. And then at the end of the turn, we can put a maximum monster from our graveyard back to the top of our deck, so it's also kind of a slow consistency skill. Yeah, I don't know about this skill. I think it does a lot of different things, but it's still very restrictive, it's very slow, and I don't think this skill is going to be fantastic. I'm going to have to really test it to really find out, but my first impression of this skill is it looks kind of weak, and I think if you're going to be playing a Magnum Overlord deck, you're better off just using something a bit more generic. So these are the skills. Overall, I am very excited. We haven't really had any Rush news in a really long time, so getting anything is really, really cool, and I think these are all really, really cool skills. Especially Nail Skill 2, I'm looking forward to playing that with your Drago. The Archive skill, if we can get these Thunder monsters, I think that's going to be really, really exciting. I really like Trigger Drago as a card. Then we have the Rower Skill 1, which definitely interests me, and Rower Skill 2 interests me only really because I really like the idea of having access to Doom Metal, not really because I like the skill. I think I still prefer the Rower Skill 1 overall. Rower and Roman skill seems a bit weird to me. Harpy skill 1, again, this seems really, really cool. I'm really looking forward to jamming some Harpy ladies. And again, these other 3 skills I'm not super hyped on, but I think they all have potential. Realistically, I'm really going to have to get in, play a ton of ladder with them, and really see what works. But this is all still very exciting, very, very happy, and I'm really looking forward to the release of the Maximum monsters, which we should be getting at the very least the Harpy ladies in the beginning of the event on the 28th, and then the box should be coming a little bit later after that in early March. So, thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.